All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Jayme CheeseSlice, the engineer and producer of Uncontrolled Opposition. And I got to turn off the music. There we go. Sorry about that. And we're going to be talking about the assassination of Huey Long today. So it's a new article written by Jayme Kuzmarov that he's published, and they're going to be talking about it. So before we get started, let me go ahead and bring on Gloria and Jayme. Hello, Gloria. And hello, Jayme.
Hey, everyone.
You guys ready to talk? We got about an hour to record, and you guys know the drill. So for the people at home, if you've never seen the show before, this is a radio program where we record it's a recorded radio program that we're going to record for about 55 minutes. And then at the end of that, we'll shut it down, maybe have a little bit of talk afterwards, and then that'll be the show. But we record the radio program live here on YouTube, so you can see us with all of the unedited stuff that doesn't make it into the radio show. So anyway, Gloria, take it away. Let's do this.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to Uncontrolled Opposition, where together we battle mind wars with truth strikes. I'm Gloria Guillo, an investigative journalist, and I'm here with my co-host, Professor Jayme Kuzmarov, managing editor of Covert Action magazine. Our producer and engineer is Jayme CheeseSlice. Today we are discussing Jayme's article on the assassination of Huey Long, FDR's competitor. The opinions you hear are ours and that of our guest, not those of WBAI, the Pacifica Foundation, or the Progressive Radio Network. FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, is often mislabeled a socialist. That's a myth. His New Deal wasn't built to dismantle the predatory capitalist system. It was built to save it. By the early 1930s, predatory capitalism was imploding. More than 9,000 banks failed. Unemployment hit 25%. GDP collapsed by nearly 30%. Families lined up for bread, farmers lost their land, and industry ground to a halt. The predatory system was staring into an abyss. Back then, workers didn't accept it quietly. Sit-down strikes shut down auto plants. Mass marches shook cities. Communist and socialist parties gained traction. For the first time, the predator class feared not just unrest, but the dismantling of their economic system of institutionalized theft. Roosevelt's reforms, Social Security, unemployment insurance, banking rules, labor protections, job programs were not socialism. They were concessions, pressure valves. These reforms gave families just enough hope to keep them chained to the predatory capitalist system. While FDR was called a traitor to his elite class, in truth, he preserved their dominance. The real danger to the predatory capitalist system was Huey Long. His Share the Wealth program pledged to cap fortunes at $50 million, redistribute income, guarantee homes, education, and a basic grant for every family. By 1935, he had 7 million followers and was preparing a presidential run. Unlike Roosevelt, Long threatened predatory capitalism at its root. His assassination ended that threat. With Long gone, Roosevelt's compromise stood alone, and the predatory capitalist system was secured. Fast forward to 2021, where economists Emmanuel Says and Gabriel Zuckman have shown that the richest 0.00001%, mind you, just 18 families in America, each held more than $50 billion in wealth. Contrast that with the fact that 1 in 3 working age Americans are not employed and not in school. This real unemployment rate hovers at about 33%, which is higher than the 25% peak unemployment rate before the New Deal. In other words, the share of working age Americans outside employment and school today exceeds Depression era joblessness on paper. Additionally, note that nearly 1/3 of urban workers are stuck in low-wage or part-time jobs. And while productivity has more than doubled over the past 4 decades, Real wages, adjusted for inflation, have been declining sharply since the 70s. Social indicators show the same downward slide. Infant mortality in urban areas can reach 14 deaths per 1,000 live births, nearly 3 times the national average, with Black infants dying at more than twice the rate of white infants. Life expectancy in poor communities is falling, often below 70 years, compared to the national average of 76. You all know about eugenics and lethal selection, right? Well, it's hard to hide, but it's still ignored by corporate and alt media. Yes, they are trying to kill us. More than 40 million Americans live in poverty. Homelessness exceeds 650,000. Household deaths have surged past 17 trillion. And 60% of households live paycheck to paycheck. Decline has become our perversely accepted baseline. Graduating students don't see a good paying job or home ownership in their future. Therapists report depression and suicides are up amongst our children and young adults. Here's the difference. In the 1930s, elites had to concede some reforms to prevent systemic rupture. Today, under techno totalitarian rule, the predator class doesn't have to choose between reform or rupture. Propagandized culture wars, alphabet agency infiltration, controlled opposition, and general ignorance of systemic economic oppression have fractured the once united working class. Soon, central bank digital currencies will track and trace every transaction, and biometric IDs and health passports powered by AI will restrict transactions and limit access to essential resources like healthcare, employment, travel, and food for dissidents. Remember, it's not you, it's them. Don't accept the individualization of poverty and the Horatio Alger pick yourself up from your bootstrap myths. We have socialism for the wealthy with bank bailouts and rugged capitalism for everyone else in our America. The lesson is clear. Roosevelt fortified predatory capitalism by conceding. Huey Long was eliminated because he threatened it. But today, collapse is not what the predator class fears. Collapse is what they engineer. Because in a managed collapse, they tighten their grip. Jayme, please tell our audience about your article on Huey Long in Covert Action magazine that was published on September 8th and is titled A Mississippi Woman Was Given Life Sentence for Telling the Truth About a Murder Plot 90 years ago against a Louisiana Senator, Huey P. Long. Thank you.
I think your assessment is important as far as the historical significance of Huey Long, who was against this kind of predatory capitalist system and was actually, doing things as the governor to challenge the vested interests, and that invited their wrath, and they resorted to political assassination. And we're supposed to believe that political assassinations are the work of lone nut gunmen in American history, and that we don't have coordinated political conspiracies. But the evidence in the Long case makes clear that that is false, and that there was a coordinated conspiracy. And a woman who exposed it was a woman named Jessica Fields. And a remarkable book was written about, I think, around 25 years ago by her nephew. And it just told her story. And her story, she was a hairdresser from Mississippi, and she ended up living in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And then for a period she lived in Washington, D.C., and she knew Huey Long. And for our audience, Huey Long was the governor of Louisiana in the late 20s into the early 30s, and then he became a senator, and he was poised to challenge. He had a share the wealth program. He actually wanted to set a cap that income could not be above $1 million, and that it was a redistributive plan, and that would guarantee an income for everybody, that every man I think the slogan was "Every man a king," that every man, would be able to have a car, have the American dream, so to speak. And he introduced a lot of very progressive measures as the governor. In fact, he's among the most popular governors in the state's history. If you go to Louisiana, he's commemorated there. He's beloved there. He set up a family dynasty. His son took over, became a longtime senator in the state. Some historians have tried to present him as a kind of dictator, but I mean, look, he got a lot done. He got some of his own people in positions of power because that's what was needed to pass the legislation that he did to challenge big business. And he really helped in the development of the state. He ended up using the resources of state government to build up miles and miles of roads, by taxing the wealthy more. And he built up the Louisiana State University into a very good university, things like that. I mean, he brought a huge amount of benefits to the population, and he taught. I mean, he would give speeches kind of condemning the moneyed elite, and he called wars that the U.S. fought in those days, like the Philippine War and the World War One, murderous fraud perpetrated by Wall Street. I mean, he was a guy who really spoke truth to power, and people respected him. And he could relate to the average people and their struggles. He would give talks in rural areas, and he related to the people, and they knew he wasn't a phony. Most politicians are phony, but he wasn't. He got things done. And he brought a lot of benefits as the governor. That's why they loved him. Now we hate our politicians, but Huey, they loved him. They still love him. He did stuff. And as senator, he was making a difference, inroads in Washington, and he was really challenging Roosevelt from the left, and had a good shot of making it in the 36. That was still the heart of the Great Depression, don't forget. And this woman, she set up a salon in Washington and long became a customer there. So she got to know him well, but she had heard him speak in rural Louisiana, and he was a different politician from the rest. She could really, she was among those who were really impressed by him, his kind of fiery rhetoric, and just like his down to earth personality, and he could just talk and relate to regular people. And again, he was not a phony. And he was kind of, I think, a big personality like a Trump, but he actually worked for the people. And to get things done, he got a lot of his own people in important positions. So they accused him of being a dictator. And she wrote this book is told by her nephew. It's like her story told by him. And then she got wind of this plot against him. And she said there was a grocery store and a pool hall that she would go by, and that some local men of influence in Baton Rouge would go there as a hangout, and that one day she overheard that they were drawing straws, and they said whoever gets the straw is the one to carry out the plot to kill Huey Long. And the guy who drew the straw was a doctor in town named Carl Weiss, whose father and family had kind of went up against the Long machine, and they had removed him or the uncle from a judgeship, and somebody may have lost a job in the family. So they had a personal grudge against Long. And then she tried to alert police, but nobody would pay her any attention. And then after Long was assassinated, she again repeated the story that there were influential men in the town involved, but instead they accused her of being insane and charged her with a crime. And she went to, I think ultimately she went to an insane asylum. They judged her to be mentally insane, and they locked her up in an insane asylum for the rest of her life, tragically.
I think you wrote in your article criminally insane, which is
Yeah.
even worse. There's even more protocols for lockdown if someone is criminally insane.
Yeah, so she was in like a prison type, and in those days, mental health facilities were horror chambers where they would carry out lobotomies, and so I think she was subjected to very, very, you can read the book One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is a great novel about that. I always enjoyed that book and the movie with Jack Nicholson, but it was a reality that those mental hospitals were horrific environments, very, very oppressive institutions. So she was confined in that and she lived a long life. So she was there. I think she was middle-aged at the time, but she lived into her 90s. So over 45 years she spent in this mental hospital, all because she tried to warn authorities about the plot and tell the truth. And unfortunately, that's what often happens. We think we live in a model democracy, but whistleblowers in our society are often horrifically treated and branded in this way. Truth tellers and whistleblowers are horribly treated and branded insane. And really, it's a society that's insane that allow these predator class, as we call them, because they clearly, there's strong evidence to corroborate what was written, her story. In fact, the Long machine, it was open talk among the, because Louisiana was a narrow elite had ruled the state from the foundation of the state, and they had upheld white supremacy during the Reconstruction era, kept the black population really impoverished, and kept a large class of the white population impoverished as well. I mean, Louisiana was more like a third world state, really underdeveloped, kind of banana republic dominated by Standard Oil in the early part of the 20th century. And that's what Long had challenged. And Long, it should be noted, came out of the socialist movement. One of his top aides, S.J. Harper, had been a close friend with Eugene Victor Debs, who was the magnetic leader of the American Socialist Party during its heyday in the early 1900s. So he kind of came out of that socialist populist milieu. And it's often forgotten that those parties made strong inroads in the South, and I think could again, with effective organizing, the left. And that's why we had a whole show devoted to the weakness of the left, because they don't carry out effective organizing. They get into these identity politics and cultural issues, and they don't try and organize working class Americans.
The latest words I'd like to use are these purity tests that people lob at each other. And you can't be part of a left group if, let's say, you disagree on the climate change narrative as to what causes it. I mean, little things just explode.
Yeah.
And we see those as controlled opposition and infiltration.
Yeah, so we can look to the lesson of American history, how left-wing progressive movements and figures gain traction in the South. We shouldn't write off the southern region. Oh, they're just back, and often the left does that too. Hillary Clinton called them deplorables, and but they're hardworking, good people out there. And it's just nobody talks to them. They end up gravitating to the Republican Party because of some of the anti-government. They're often critical of the government legitimately, and then the Republicans are pushing for lower taxes. I mean, why wouldn't they want to pay lower taxes if the government is corrupt? And some of the Republican politicians are better in kind of meeting them where they are and kind of relating to them better. So the left has to learn how to relate to these kind of people and draw them into a progressive movement and their progressive kind of policies and initiatives. And I mean, there is a pattern, a history of that. There is a left tradition in those regions, and Long embodies that. He came out of the socialist movement. He was really kind of unique. I mean, there are other figures of his era, like Robert La Follette, who really, Wisconsin, who developed the Wisconsin tradition in his state of progressive government, higher taxes on the wealthy, funding of public education, strong support for labor rights, challenging big corporate power. And that's the kind of policies Long was enacting and pushing for in his state. And that won them tremendous support because they were hated. The huge corporate monopolies were seen as antithetical to an actual free enterprise system, and also just hated for their exploitative practices. And then as far as the plot against him, yeah, I mean, one of his aides, there was open talk in that elite circled of killing him and who was going to do it. And his secretary, they recorded a meeting at the posh DeSoto Hotel in New Orleans. A group of very wealthy New Orleans businessmen and bankers had met, and there was a Dr. Wise, but I think and it was the dictaphone. I think that was actually Dr. Weiss, who may have been there, and that may have been what Fields was describing it as, although she described it as a meeting ground in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the capital. But at this meeting that Long's aide got a video of, they also drew straws and openly talked about his assassination. And somebody said, "Oh, we'll have the support of FDR and the FDR administration. Don't worry." Somebody raised that question, and any concerns about if they'd be prosecuted And he said, "Oh, don't worry, the FDR administration will support it," because I think FDR knew that Long was probably a big threat to him politically to unseat him in 1936. The primary was coming up. So anyway, there was a recording of that meeting, and it seemed to, things unfolded the way Fields and Long's aide reported. Now, it is Unsolved Mysteries did an excellent segment. That was an outstanding program that they took off the air, but it was an outstanding program hosted by Robert Stack, who was an amazing host. But they featured these political assassinations uniquely. They carried out very in-depth and objective investigations into a series of political assassinations in American history, including and brought up the mysteries about them and tried to solve the mystery, going back to the Lincoln assassination, because there are a lot of question marks there about John Wilkes Booth and how he got away. And they had episodes on the Robert Kennedy, the John Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Vince Foster. And they also did a great episode on Huey Long. And I mean, it was both good, entertaining television, but also they're doing serious, in-depth investigations with very good people that they interviewed, who had carried out serious investigations into these matters. And there it made clear that the gun was planted, because Weiss, it seems, in this case, was not the killer. Again, he was the doctor who allegedly drew the straw. Now, according to Fields's story, everybody said, "Oh, he's not a good assassin," because he was a prominent doctor in town, kind of upper class guy, not a violent guy. So they said, in her telling, a bodyguard there, one of Long's bodyguards, came up to him after and said, "Oh, don't worry, we'll do the job. You just do what we tell you, and we'll take care of things, and then we'll take care of you and your family after," according to her telling. And that seems to have been what played out, because the Unsolved Mystery shows that the bullets that killed Long were not from the gun that Weiss owned, and it's believed that there's evidence that somebody after broke into Weiss's car, got and planted a gun on him. He may not have even had any gun at all, and then he probably couldn't have gotten the building with the gun, because Long was assassinated at the state capitol. There was a special session, and he came back. And this is, I published my article on the anniversary, so it was September 8th. The assassination occurred September 8th, 1935. And Long at that time was a senator. Yeah, he was gearing for the primary for the next election, the 36th election. But he came back to the state capitol to assist the governor, who was his ally, in passing a lot of laws that were in line with his share of the wealth program to challenge the big corporations. And that's when he got killed. And they said that Weiss was the lone gun shooter, but
let's slow down a little bit on that and just
Okay.
kind of give our audience the feel of it. From what you wrote, I'm not an expert on Huey Long by any means, but what you wrote and what I read was that a nurse was talking to him about why his mouth was bleeding, and he said that he was struck by that doctor in the face, and it split his lip. So he was still alive in the hospital. And from what I read, he died from a bullet that was lodged, I think, in his lower back, like near his kidney or something like that. That was the fatal shot. And they didn't see that. They left it in him. And that's what ultimately killed him, was that other shot. Like they were claiming that the doctor was in the front of him, but the fatal bullet was in the back. And, you and I have seen in all of these assassinations, it's never just one gunman. And we've even seen with the recent shooting of Kirk that there's always multiple shots, and the ballistics don't match. So this is not anything unusual. It's very common to have multiple shooters.
Yeah, and in this case, it's believed that Dr. Weiss didn't actually have a gun. He couldn't have gotten the building with a gun. That he actually may have punched Long, but then that they planted a gun. They broke into his car, planted a gun on him after. But even then, the gun planted on him didn't have the right bullets that killed Long. And then there were later some veiled admission that it was actually the guards that killed him. And then the official story tried to spin it that, they tried to kill Weiss after Weiss attacked Long and they mistakenly hit Long. But the real story is that they were part of the plot. One of the guards had worked for the Capone family, Al Capone, and others had worked with the FBI, and that really Weiss was kind of the patsy. And they killed him because Weiss was himself killed. He was riddled with bullets by the guards, but then they claim they accidentally shot. Like, it was kind of veiled admission years later that we accidentally shot Long when we were getting at Weiss, and he was the assassin. But the more plausible story is that Weiss was the patsy. The guards basically admitted to being the ones to shoot Long, but that they were in the pay of these wealthy financiers who had it in for Long, and with possible support of the Democratic Party establishment in Washington, who needed to eliminate Long, the threat to big business, as you said, that he represented. And their other sign, like the funeral home, I guess, was tipped off and had prepared a coffin in advance. So how does that happen?
That's
He's
crazy.
a healthy man, and so there are all these signs that this was a planned assassination. And then there's the doctor. Yeah, he was alive. And this you see with other assassination, like in the Martin Luther King assassination, one of the nurses' sons said that his mother told them that King was alive and they could have saved him, but the doctor, Breen Bland, ordered everybody out of the operating room. And then as she was leaving, she saw him, the doctor, Breen Bland, smother King with a pillow to make sure he was dead. And the Huey Long case seems similar, that he was still alive and they could have saved him. And even a gangster, the mafia may have been involved, because there's a gangster, Frank Costello, who is based in New Orleans. And he said, Costello, and there's also Carlos Marcello. And I think the two were involved in a lot of assassinations. And he said, like, to Meyer Lansky, we could have saved him, but the doctors could have saved him, but somebody gave him the sign that he wasn't worth saving or something like that. And there's questions of this Dr. Arthur Vidrine. He was the treating doctor. And I think I'd have to review my notes about it, but I think it was a question as to why he was treating him and that he wasn't really that qualified. And yeah, I think the bottom line, they could have saved him, but they wanted him dead. And yeah, it fits a pattern in American history. Again, we're supposed to believe that the United States is this model democracy, and that we don't have these coordinated political conspiracies or coups. What these amount to are coup d'etats, essentially, or rigging of the political system by the elite, and using violent methods to sustain or either obtain their power or sustain power. A critical look at these important incidents of what Peter Dale Scott would call deep politics shows that the United States is like other countries. It has a violent underbelly of its political structure. It's not a model democracy. And then this capitalist plutocratic elite will eliminate threats through violent methods. And as we discussed, Long was a threat. He was really challenging the status quo, the capitalist status quo. He was pushing for the redistribution of wealth. He was challenging huge corporations like Standard Oil Company. He was talking out against Wall Street, challenging the interests of Wall Street banks and the interests of the people at large. And he was a very charismatic person, and he knew how to operate. He was a skilled political operator. He knew how to get his own people in positions so that he could actually advance the legislation that backed his rhetoric. And he had huge respect and love among the people, which is rare. Most politicians these days are hated, and he's somebody who was beloved, and they still love him in Louisiana. And one thing his son said was that his son Russell Long said that they killed Long because there was a poll tax that prevented a lot of the poor whites from voting in Louisiana and other states. And that was one of the measures I think he was passing that night, abolishing the poll tax, $1 tax, which was a lot of money in those days, which prevented poor people from voting. Abolishing that tax would bring him more and more support in the state and other states too if they passed that kind of measure following Louisiana, and that's what they didn't want. So they're actually blocking the suffrage.
And also at that time, blacks could not vote because of segregation.
Well, that's true, yeah. And I think Long's record was much. I mean, he didn't speak in specific for the black population, but a lot of his policies benefited the black population, and he was not a racist, and he was respected in the black population. So he would secure a large black vote across the country because his policies benefited the lower and lower middle class, and African Americans were, of course, in that class. And he was not a racist like most Southern politicians and the Southern aristocracy.
It said he came from humble origins. Do you have any information about his background? And then also when they were customizing this coffin to his measurements, I was wondering, was he a particularly big guy? I don't know if you had done any research. Was he like 6'2", or what? He looked big in the photos. He looked very tall. You have to research that.
Yeah, I don't know all the detail. There are biographers who've written about him who know more details about his life than me. I think he came from a relatively modest background. I think he put himself through law school. I think he was like a kind of alpha male. I mean, he was into gambling, maybe womanizing, drinking. But he was more for the people, and he was a tough guy. Like, he would stand up to the corrupt big business corrupt elements. He was like a tough guy, and I mean, I think he was a strong man, and he had a very charismatic personality. And he was rooted in the South. He came from like a rural town in northern Louisiana, kind of hard scrabble town, and he could relate to people, and he spoke their lingo. But he followed through. Like, I've studied the career. Like, Bill Clinton could give a very good talk. He could go into rural Arkansas and win over the people and relate to them because he grew up there. But Clinton was a sellout. The head of the AFL-CIO said Clinton in Arkansas said he'd pat us on the back and piss down our leg. They said that in 91. Before he was president, he's like, we know Bill, and we know what kind of president he was. We know he's a sellout. He's out for himself. He's a phony. Huey is the exact, a Southern politician. Lyndon Johnson was an evil man, another Southern politician who made it all the way. And, but he was just a bad guy from his youth. But, Huey was a guy people respected because he talked the talk. He related to the people. He spoke their language, their vernacular, but he followed through, and he would battle. He's like a battler, a guy like in football, a small running back who just goes in and takes on these big guys, and he'll tackle them. And and maybe sometimes he did play dirty. Politics is a dirty game. I think sometimes historians have unrealistic expectation. They think he's going to be morally pure in every single thing he does. Well, politics is a dirty game. and to get ahead. Sometimes, he did something that could be considered autocratic. I mean, I don't think the newspapers, he tolerated much criticism of his government. He's not a saint, but he got a lot done. The bottom line is, compare him to everybody else, he got a huge amount of things done, and he fought against these corrupt big business elements, and the people loved him. He delivered, and his name is all over the state. And his family, he established a family dynasty for a reason. And why should he be assassinated? He's somebody who would have made a difference in Washington. He would have pushed things further to the left, and that's the real left. Now, as we said, we discussed on the show, and when we had his left on left, that the left is wrapped up in these culture war issues and takes some sometimes bizarre positions and very intolerant of any dissenting view on certain topics. But the real left is somebody like Long. It's the bread and butter economic issues. I mean, those issues today weren't issues in American politics then. But Long, I think, a guy like him defined the left. He wants to tax the rich more. He wants to, end these corporate monopolies. He wants to use the tax money to invest in public infrastructure, in education, in healthcare. And he delivered in those areas, and that's why he was extremely popular. And these are popular policies. There's no reason a politician like him again can't come up. I mean, they might try to assassinate him, but if they talk to the people and they promote a progressive economic program that will benefit the majority of people of the state, and that's what he was advancing.
I did some research on his height and weight to see what this nugget was, and basically he was smaller than the other politicians. He was only 5'8". So for what ChatGPT says is the reason they made a custom coffin for him was that coffins in Louisiana were very simple. They weren't, made for a politician, someone who had social stature. So that was why they custom made it, because they wanted to give him something more grand. So that's the reason. It wasn't his height or weight. He was actually, smaller.
Yeah.
I mean,
But he
actually,
had a big
FDR
personality.
was over 6 feet. FDR.
Yeah, he may have been small, but he had a big personality, and he can project well in a speech. And again, he fought. He was a tireless crusader, and he tirelessly worked to advance his agenda. And that's why he was such a threat. He actually got things done. He knew how to maneuver politically to get actual legislation passed along line he had said, populist legislation. And that's pretty rare. We've seen a lot of politicians come and go who can make a beautiful speech, or some can even relate to people, but they never get things done in the way Huey did.
The other thing that's kind of interesting is that, and we see this all the time when there's a murder or an assassination, they buried him within 2 days, within 48 hours, which, I mean, there's not a lot of time for an autopsy, not a lot of time for fact finding, when they bury you within 48 hours of your death. So that's
and there was all kind of cover
pattern
up
we see.
in the Louisiana police that's documented in various books. And there was a code among the police, I think, never to talk about, and there was no proper police investigation, a huge cover up that I think extended all the way to the FBI. And that's the pattern you see in all these political assassinations.
You'd sent me another article that we're going to be working on for the show, and it was about a CIA asset that had his hands cut off. And I'm reading that, and I wanted to ask you. There was another murder that we was discussing where the hands were cut off. I think it was maybe a Native American. I think maybe it involved Peltier. Somebody involved in that. I don't know. I just the hands cut off to really hide the identity of the body is pretty chilling. And I know I've read it before, so I don't know if you can recall it.
I don't know about that, but
Okay.
I do know that the Weiss family fought for years to exonerate Dr. Carl Weiss, who was a very successful doctor and a kind of weird assassin, because he came from kind of middle to upper class family in Baton Rouge. He had a young family. He was a very successful and widely respected doctor. And it was a source of shame that he was involved in this. But yeah, I know his son fought to try and exonerate his reputation, and felt also that he was set up, which it appears he was, although it's possible he was somehow involved with the conspirators, as the Fields study suggests, that he was there when they coordinated the plot and picked the straws and stuff like that.
Well, I'm just Googling why they do that stuff. But yeah, in Huey Long's case, they did not remove his hands, but Jayme had sent me another article. What was the CIA asset? Do you recall?
Well, that's a different case. That's a
Right.
very interesting case of John
Yeah.
Arthur Paisley, who was
We'll be doing that one too, folks.
Okay, well then we won't discuss that now. But yeah, I mean there is a
A
pattern.
teaser.
I think the thing people should realize is that there, and now it's becoming evident with what we've seen in the last few years. The Trump.
Jayme?
I think he locked up.
Yeah. Okay. This will be, I guess, edited out.
Yeah,
Let's
we'll
see.
edit this out. But
He has to go out and go back in, right?
he was right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
He might have to drop out and come back.
Okay, let me tell him.
Let me see if I can figure out where he.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
We can hear you, but you're still frozen. Oh, there you go.
Oh, the computer must have froze for a sec. Well, I was just saying
something about
I
Trump.
have a book that I'm coming up with called Assassination as American as Apple Pie. And I start with the Lincoln assassination. And, the myth is that these were lone, gunmen, just deranged individuals who took it upon themselves to try and kill somebody powerful and gain infamy or something like that. But in fact, we see a coordinated pattern of political assassination, and it points to the dark underbelly of American political life. And often, yeah, there's a lot of money involved, and it's figures like Long who got assassinated. I mean, even Lincoln. It's politicians who challenge the big banking interest, because Lincoln, don't forget, tried to fund the American Civil War through Congress and evade big banks and set up a system where there was more public control over the money supply. Their suggestion Kennedy was trying to do the same. So, and Huey Long, as we discussed, challenged Wall Street Corporation and big corporation and big banks, and look what happened to him. So it's political figures of a high level who challenge big banking interests, who unfortunately often do meet that fate. And if you look into the assassination, yeah, there are clearly a lot of money involved. I mean, one lone deranged person can't just go and kill a prominent political figure. It requires a lot of planning and financing, and often professional assassins. And that's what we see in a lot of these cases. And the Long case as well, the bodyguards were, if you look into their background, they had background in the FBI and the Al Capone organization. These were professional, could be professional hitmen, and they were, so, yeah, and I think it's a tragedy, as you pointed out at the beginning. If Long had, become a president, and he would inspire other figures of similar political persuasion, the United States could have evolved into a different country from the kind of dystopia we see today, ruled by this predatory elite that is ruining the country. I mean, they're ruining the United States. You walk around American City, there's an ungainly amount of homeless people everywhere. The education system is a disgrace, the way they pay teachers, the healthcare system. I mean, we should have had universal healthcare a long time ago. All the horrible wars. If we had Long type politician, he called out those wars as murderous fraud by Wall Street, and he was not going to wage that kind of war. So if we had more people like him, we'd have a much better society. So these are cataclysmic events that alter the course of American history very negatively. And hopefully by shining light on it, we can shine light on the predatory nature of that elite, as you eloquently described at the beginning.
Yeah, the other thing is that this concept of socialism, even with Huey Long, he wasn't really advocating, a change to the entire system. But whenever you say you want to redistribute wealth and eliminate this outrageousness, this concentration of income into, as I said in the monologue, 18 individuals was a study that was done that control over $50 billion in assets. And that was back in, I think, 2021, they did this research. I couldn't get any research that's current. But, that's just 18 families or 18 individuals have that kind of wealth. So it's not necessarily, changing the entire capitalist system to a different model, but just, stopping this incredible concentration and redistributing income and wealth. But any talk of that, any talk of it is off the table. Anything. And we see that in other developing countries also. Anytime they try to redistribute land or to take over certain industries to make them more equitable for water treatment or electricity or transportation or any of those things, you see the country all of a sudden becomes an authoritarian country to the United States and all the media, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, the head of the country is gone. And in Libya in particular, you had Gaddafi, and he didn't want to participate with the banking system. He wanted to be off the banking system and have their own currency, and whacked, boom, that's it.
Well, and we see that the way the U.S., the kind of gangster method used in U.S. foreign policy, have also been used historically, domestically. And Huey Long can be compared to some of the leaders that the U.S. removed internationally, whether it's Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran, who wanted to nationalize, take certain national control over Iran's oil, Patrice Lumumba, who wanted to nationalize the rich diamond and mineral wealth in the Congo. Boom, he's assassinated. Those are the kind of leaders that the U.S. targeted overseas, and they're doing it here within the United States. But they're covering it up to make it look like it was this deranged doctor who killed them, when really clearly it was a plot. And they had to put this poor woman, who was a good woman, who was trying to get the truth out, and they sent her to a criminal insane asylum for 45 years. This wonderful woman had to live her life in hell. And that is a crime against humanity, what they did to Jessica Fields. And it showed that the evil knows no bounds of these people, what they'll do to good-natured people, truth tellers, put her in a criminal asylum for that long. It's just horrific to contemplate. And these are the kind of people, unfortunately, running our government and society. But the more people who have awareness of the historical pattern and how they operate will try and form a progressive movement against them. And we can build off the legacy of a remarkable political figure like Huey Long. We have some great role models in our history that we can look to guide us. And Long's platform is one that should be revived in states across the country. And we need people mobilizing to get into office the next generation of Huey Longs, and to protect him from these predators who will try and kill him.
The other thing we've seen is, in our guest, who is, a friend and colleague, John Kiriakou, he basically exposed the torture program. And, for being a whistleblower, he was put in jail. But yet the people who actually did the torture had no problems. Nothing happened to them. But John, who brought this out, is put in prison. So, this is not something that happened in the 30s. This is something that happens every day. And we see that, constantly. And, we had a show with John, and, he talked a little bit about that. And, we see that. The other thing we see is journalists. We had Kit Clarenberg on our last show, and we've also had Dan Kovalik, and we've had, oh boy, I'm blanking on the other name, Danny Shaw. And they were accosted in airports and had their property taken. And the only thing that they are journalists and professors. But just for their opinions alone, they were harassed and interrogated and had their property taken. So, this is not something that's old. This is going on right now. And when we see on the media, we'll hear, oh well, people who want reform and change, and people who want an egalitarian society. Well, it's just that they can't get their act together, and that's why we don't have it. Well, that's not the truth. The truth is, when we have charismatic leaders and we have people who actually can make a difference, they're killed, or they're, we could take our show, or they're marginalized and shadow banned. It's hard to get a giant audience. So hey, like us, please, and share us, and donate to us, because it ain't easy. So it's not that these voices don't exist, and it's not that this talent doesn't exist. It doesn't get funded, and it gets killed, and then it gets marginalized. So but it's there, and you just got to look for it. And one thing I just want to say to all our listeners and viewers is that every little step you take is important. I have this one friend, John Spritzler, and he literally stands on a street corner outside CVS, and he hands out stuff that says, let's remove the rich from power and have real, not fake democracy. And he does this every day, pretty much, and hands out little stickers and things like that. And the thing is raising consciousness at whatever level you do. I mean, Jeremy and I, are writers and journalists, and now we're podcasters. But everyone does what they can at any capacity. So even a conversation that you have with someone can change consciousness and raise consciousness. So just don't be quiet. Say what you think, and put it out there. And anything you do in at any level makes a difference. And the other thing I just want to say is, they talk about how people are depressed and how people are suicidal and things like that. And one of the things we see is that when you can do something positive, anything at whatever level, it gives you a sense of purpose and a sense of relief. So it's not that you have to hide from these things and wall yourself off and ignore these problems, that they're too much for you. No, if you take a stand and you say something and you do something at whatever level you do this something, you feel better. It's healing. So don't shy away from any activism. Engage in it, and you'll see what I'm saying. You feel better, and you know that you're doing something positive. So to keep up the good work if you're doing something, and whatever you do is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, well, the pattern of whistleblowers, yeah, it goes back a long way. That whistleblowers have often been maligned and mistreated. But I mean, the judgment of history is often very favorable toward those whistleblowers. So that's a calculation sometimes people have to make, whether they're just going to go along with the herd or allow wrongdoing to progress, or whether they will speak the truth. And sometimes they may have to pay a price, sometimes a serious price, as we see with Jessica Fields. But history should honor her as a truth teller and a great woman of character and courage who tried to expose this sinister and evil plot. And that's why her nephew took the time to write this outstanding book, which is a historical testament to her character. And I think, yeah, Huey Long paid the ultimate price, but I think he was doing the right thing. He was trying to do good for society and advance a very progressive vision. And unfortunately, it did cost him his life. But I think history should remember him and carry on his legacy by trying to build political movements along the lines of his organization and what he was trying to do, which was to challenge big corporations and to use the government for good, to build infrastructure, to invest in education. I think that's important, and that's what we should demand from our leaders. We have some good role models, again, in American history, him being one, and there are others. And those are the kind of leaders we should demand today. And if they're not living up to that, we should be actively involved in removing them. A lot of our congressmen, they stay there for decades and they do nothing positive. It's the same guys, and many are geriatrics now. I was in Washington recently at an event in Congress, and I saw Mitch McConnell. He looked pathetic. He could barely walk. He had two guys helping him. And I would feel bad for an old man, except his record is absolutely horrendous. And I know I've been in the state of Kentucky, and they hate him there. He's screwed over those people and served the rich throughout his life. So I have no compassion, even as he's an old man. But why is he still there? He's been there for decades. We need guys like, again, with the value of Huey Long, and who will fight. You've got to fight. These are ruthless people, and you've got to fight every day against them. And we need to fight at the grassroots level to get people to build movements that can get a Huey Long type in office. And that's what the left should be working for.
But we can't fight
economic issues. We have to move away. The cultural issues, it just divide and inflame people. We've got to focus on political economy, taxing the rich, reconstructing the economy in a way that will serve the majority, having the government provide good public services, and ending the endless wars, and cutting the military budget significantly, and cutting the power of predatory banking interests and their control over our government and economy.
Well, what I was going to say is we can't fight if we form circular firing squads, if we subject every member of our group to a purity test.
Exactly.
We can't
There's
win.
always going to be some divisions on certain issues, so let it be. That's part of life, but there should be unity on certain core economic principles, and that will be a popular policy. The majority of the American public supported the majority of the state of Louisiana at that time supported Long's agenda, and they will support it today. We need effective leaders to articulate that vision, and they will support that vision, whether it's in Louisiana, Oklahoma, Texas, or New York. That's a universally valued agenda. And that's what a new left should be focused on.
Jeremy, we have to close. We've gotten the wrap it up sign. Please remind our audience how they can follow your important work.
Sure. You can find me on Substack, Too Hot for the Mainstream. And I also write for Covert Action Magazine. And I have my own website, JaymeKuzmarov.com. And you can support me through that website. And it also advertises my books, including a new book I have on Syria and the regime change operation. And that's an example. We shouldn't be using our tax money for regime change operation in foreign countries that serve predatory banking and oil companies. And we instead use our government's resources to develop the economy here and to promote good public services for our people.
We're going to close it out. Just to remind our audience that the opinions you hear are ours and that of our guest. In this case, we don't have a guest today, not those of WBAI, the Pacifica Foundation, or the Progressive Radio Network. That wraps up our show for today. This is Uncontrolled Opposition. I'm Gloria Guillo, joined here by Professor Jayme Kuzmarov. Remember to like and share our broadcast. Your kind support keeps us going. Thank you.
All right, that'll do it for the show for today.
Thank you, Jayme.
That's a wrap.
Yeah.
We both got on a soapbox. I couldn't help it. It's just
no problem. We got
Jeremy.
I need to get a link for your new book so we can start promoting that.
And, okay. Do you want me to send that to you now, or in the chat, or before I do it?
Yeah, if you want to send it now, that's fine.
I can do it. It'll take a second. Yeah,
I'll update it soon. I mean, I could share it on the screen. While you're doing that, let me share this real quick video because you mentioned something earlier, and that I just saw this yesterday. So I thought this was kind of funny because we all know what Palantir is and how it's supposed to, it's supposed to ruin our lives.
Everyone's saying this wrong. It's not Palantir, the supposed technology company that is going to be spying on Americans and making files on everybody. That's ridiculous. That's not where this comes from. The Palantir, okay? It's the seeing stones of Middle Earth. It's what Sauron uses to spy on everyone. Oh, shit.
Okay, I got to run. So yeah.
Me too.
gotta
All right,
cut
thanks,
this show,
Jayme.
yeah.
That was cute.
Okay.
Yeah, and it checks out. That is from Lord of the Rings. So I didn't actually know about that, but yeah, I think that's where they got the name Palantir from.
It is.
Oh, I think
It's
you're
gotta
right
be.
about that. Yeah.
It's gotta be, right?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. All right. Bye,
Okay.
everybody.
All right,
Thank you,
you
Jayme.
guys.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Jayme.
We'll see you guys next week.
See you next week. Actually, tomorrow I think we have Peter Osborne. Oh, but he's doing the filming. So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, we'll see you next week. Yeah.
Okay. We'll see our audience next week, and
Yeah.
we might be doing some other stuff too.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Take care.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Bye bye.
And thank you to everybody at home. This is Uncontrolled Opposition. Have a good weekend.